day of training camp. Raven Johnson snubbing Caitlin Clark on a high five. Dare I say,
The gym was completely silent when the ultimate sign of disrespect played out in real time, proving that some grudges don't just survive the transition to the pros. They mutate into something much darker and far more permanent. Everyone thought the bad blood had been left on the college hardwood, assuming that the transition to the professional level would somehow magically erase the bitter history between these elite athletes. But a massive rumor has just set the sports world on fire, claiming that day one of an elite training camp crossover was completely derailed by a brutal, unflinching refusal to shake hands. It wasn't just a simple miscommunication or an accidental oversight born out of exhaustion, but a deliberate, icy rejection involving Caitlin Clark, a fiercely loyal veteran ally named Sophie, and the one player who has haunted Caitlin's legacy for the past 2 years, Raven Johnson. When whispers of this jaw-dropping camp drama leaked onto social media from insider text threads and burner accounts, it absolutely shattered the internet, leaving fans, analysts, and former players scrambling to figure out what really happened behind those locked, windowless doors. To understand why a simple, customary handshake turned into a psychological war zone, you have to realize that this wasn't a sudden flare-up of ego, but the violent boiling over of a toxic rivalry that has been brewing under intense, suffocating media scrutiny for over a year. The roots of this vicious camp standoff go much deeper than a single day of practice, stretching back to a time when both players were fighting for absolute supremacy in the collegiate ranks. The underlying tension actually traces back to a moment that has been permanently burned into the retinas of basketball fans forever. A moment of such pure, unadulterated disrespect that it literally changed the trajectory of 2 careers and fundamentally altered the way women's college basketball is consumed by the masses. Picture the 2023 Final Four in Dallas. The arena lights blinding, the stakes astronomically high, and Caitlin Clark pulling off a defensive maneuver that was so humiliating it felt like a physical slap in the face to the entire South Carolina roster. A team that had built an absolute dynasty on intimidation and dominance. She looked dead at Raven Johnson, who was standing behind the three-point line perfectly positioned for an open shot. And instead of closing out or establishing a defensive stance, Caitlin simply waved her off, blatantly refusing to guard her and signaling to the entire world that she viewed her opponent as an absolute, undeniable non-threat. That single, dismissive wave went violently viral within seconds, dominating massive sports networks, flooding social media timelines across every platform, and turning what could have been a brilliant strategic defensive play into a massive cultural flashpoint that deeply divided basketball fans across the globe. For the casual viewer sitting at home, it was just a spicy, highly entertaining highlight that fit perfectly into the modern era of viral sports clips. But for the young woman on the receiving end, it was a deeply personal public humiliation that tore at her mental foundation and almost pushed her out of the sport entirely. But what happened next, behind the scenes, away from the flashing cameras and the roaring crowds, would shock everyone who thought the story ended with a viral meme. Instead of just brushing it off and moving forward, the crushing weight of that viral embarrassment dragged the young South Carolina guard into a dark psychological space where the noise of the internet became entirely deafening, echoing in her mind every single time she stepped onto a basketball court. Intense rumors and later confirmed reports surfaced, indicating that the mental toll was so incredibly severe she genuinely considered walking away from basketball completely, feeling the overwhelming, suffocating weight of millions of people endlessly mocking a single moment of vulnerability on the sport's absolute biggest stage. It took a massive, emotionally draining intervention from legendary head coach Dawn Staley, combined with a grueling, silent off-season of grinding in the shadows, to begin the slow process of rebuilding a shattered psyche, turning an overwhelming sense of public humiliation into lethal, highly focused vengeance. She spent thousands of hours in empty gyms, putting up hundreds of thousands of shots, transforming the very weakness that had been mocked on national television into a weapon that she would eventually unleash on her biggest rival. When the 2024 National Championship game finally arrived, breaking every single television viewership record in the history of the sport, the narrative had completely flipped, and South Carolina didn't just beat Iowa, they systematically and ruthlessly dismantled them on both ends of the floor. But that same dismissed guard played a pivotal, lockdown defensive role against the very player who had humiliated her a year prior, famously ripping the ball completely out of her hands in a viral moment of her own that felt like pure, unadulterated poetic justice. The post-game atmosphere was incredibly thick, with unspoken words, featuring a brutal, lingering stare-down of vindication that supposedly closed the chapter on the beef forever. But in the hyper-competitive, ego-driven world of elite basketball, vengeance rarely brings true peace. But that wasn't the whole story of this bitter rivalry, as the basketball gods had already set the stage for their paths to violently cross again. The transition from collegiate superstardom to the professional grind is notoriously ruthless, a brutal reality check where past accomplishments, viral moments, and even national championship rings mean absolutely nothing the second you step onto a professional court, and lingering collegiate beefs are strictly supposed to be squashed at the door. Yet, the complex ecosystem of elite women's basketball is incredibly interconnected, featuring highly exclusive USA mini-camps, private off-season open gyms, and intense crossover scrimmages where top-tier college prospects routinely clash with newly drafted rookies and seasoned veterans. It was in one of these highly exclusive, untelevised environments, often referred to by insiders as the ultimate proving grounds, that the paths of these bitter rivals reportedly crossed again, setting the stage for a dramatic confrontation that absolutely no one in the building was prepared to witness. Reports immediately began leaking from well-connected insiders and anonymous staff members that during a highly contested physical day one scrimmage session, the underlying hostility was incredibly palpable from the very first whistle, radiating through the gym and making every single player on the floor uncomfortably aware of the dark history between the two. This wasn't just about competing for a roster spot or getting quality reps in against elite competition. This was a deeply personal, fiercely contested territory war where aggressive body language spoke entirely louder than any verbal trash talk ever could. Every screen was set a little harder. Every closeout was dangerously aggressive, and the unspoken tension hung in the air like heavy smoke, threatening to ignite into a full-blown physical altercation at any given moment. And what leaked next from that secretive camp changed everything we thought we knew about the deeply personal nature of this situation. Enter the alleged wild card in this explosive scenario: a fiery, notoriously unapologetic veteran presence known simply as Sophie, who reportedly stepped into the chaotic fray not just as a standard teammate, but as an intimidating enforcer, deliberately drawing a hard, undeniable line in the sand. In professional and elite-level sports, highly touted rookies often rely heavily on established veterans to navigate the treacherous, politically complex waters of locker room dynamics. But when a veteran actively and aggressively participates in icing out a specific opponent, it elevates a personal grudge into a full-blown, undeniable clique war. See, insiders whispered frantically that the dynamic duo made it aggressively clear they wanted absolutely nothing to do with the South Carolina standout, deliberately and visibly isolating her during partner drills and exchanging icy, judgmental glares that communicated pure, unadulterated disdain to anyone watching. This specific kind of psychological warfare is actually incredibly common in the elite professional ranks, where mental toughness is tested just as rigorously as physical skill. But to see it play out so blatantly, so openly against a specific rival, sent massive shockwaves through the coaching staff and the rest of the players in attendance. It was a clear, unmistakable, profoundly loud message that the disrespect of the past had absolutely not been forgotten, that apologies were neither wanted nor offered, and that the social hierarchy of this new environment was going to be aggressively established through sheer, unapologetic intimidation. The gym quickly divided into silent factions, with players nervously observing the incredibly toxic dynamic, acutely aware that stepping in to mediate could instantly put them in the crosshairs of the powerful alliance that had just formed. But the absolute breaking point of the entire camp, the moment that would instantly become legendary in the dark lore of women's basketball history, was still yet to come. When the final whistle of the grueling session finally blew, and the customary, age-old line was formed at center court to exchange mutual respect and standard handshakes, the tension in the facility allegedly reached a suffocating, so almost unbearable peak that left bystanders completely speechless and paralyzed in anticipation. The handshake line is the ultimate sacred tradition in all of sports, the brief moment where warriors who just tried to destroy each other physically acknowledge their shared humanity, making a refusal to participate an absolute declaration of total, unforgivable war. As the exhausted players slowly moved through the line, slapping hands and muttering standard praises, the leaked narrative claims that Caitlin and her veteran enforcer Sophie intentionally and dramatically broke formation, coldly averting their eyes and blatantly refusing to extend a hand when they finally reached their fierce rival. The massive, echoing gym supposedly fell into a dead, terrifying silence. The exact kind of heavy, incredibly uncomfortable quiet where you could literally hear a pin drop on the hardwood, as the ultimate unspoken rule of athletic sportsmanship was violently and unapologetically shattered right in front of everyone. It was a vicious, highly calculated, incredibly public snub that perfectly mirrored the exact same dismissive, arrogant energy of the infamous wave-off, proving beyond a shadow of a doubt that no amount of time, maturity, or championship rings had cooled the boiling anger constantly simmering just beneath the surface. For the player left completely hanging in front of her peers, it was a stark, brutal reminder that some bridges are permanently burned to absolute ashes, while for the two players walking away, it was a ruthless, unbending declaration of dominance that they absolutely refused to apologize or answer for. And the immediate, explosive fallout from this single, fleeting moment of disrespect would instantly ignite a massive firestorm that nobody could control. Within a matter of hours, the frantic whispers of this brutal, calculated rejection breached the locked doors of the private training facility and hit the internet like an absolute, unstoppable freight train, causing basketball, Twitter, TikTok, and Reddit to descend into total, uncontrollable chaos. Passionate fans who had spent the last 2 years fiercely and tirelessly debating the ethics of the original wave-off were suddenly armed with massive amounts of fresh ammunition, immediately launching into highly toxic, incredibly personal debates about sportsmanship, massive egos, and the dark, hidden side of hyper-competitive professional athletes. Major daytime sports podcasts, a highly paid digital commentators, and viral content creators immediately grabbed hold of the unverified leak, obsessively dissecting the alleged snub from every possible angle, desperately questioning whether this specific level of petty, high school-level drama was actively damaging the overall reputation of the sport's biggest, most lucrative rising star. Massive online factions immediately went to absolute war with one another. One fiercely loyal side defended the icy maneuver as an old-school, cutthroat, strictly business competitor mentality, loudly arguing that professional players shouldn't ever be forced to fake respect or smile for someone they genuinely, deeply despise. On the exact opposite side of the digital battlefield, angry critics aggressively slammed the coordinated snub as an arrogant, entirely classless display of lingering bitterness, accusing the duo of acting like high school bullies rather than professional ambassadors of a rapidly growing global game. The narrative spun entirely out of control so incredibly fast that it quickly became practically impossible to separate the raw, unedited truth of the quiet gym from the wildly sensationalized, heavily exaggerated rumors of the internet machine. But the undeniable damage to their public relationship was already permanently, irrevocably done. But the real, underlying truth hidden behind this massive wave of daily drama is something much more profound and incredibly important for the future of the sport. What this widely rumored Day One disaster truly exposes to the casual viewer is the gritty, completely unfiltered, often ugly reality of elite women's basketball, and a deeply complex sport that has historically been heavily sanitized by mainstream media networks, but is actually fueled by intense, borderline ruthless psychological warfare at the highest levels. For decades, the media aggressively tried to package women's basketball players as perfectly polite, smiling, flawless ambassadors who were just happy to be growing the game, completely ignoring the fact that they are actually fierce, highly aggressive, unapologetic warriors who carry their deeply personal grudges like shiny badges of honor. These athletes absolutely do not like each other, and they frequently use past slights, viral embarrassments, and intense media narratives as literal, highly combustible fuel to survive the brutal, unforgiving daily grind of elite professional competition. But the calculated refusal to shake a rival's hand isn't just a fleeting, emotional moment of sudden disrespect. It is a highly strategic, incredibly deliberate chess move specifically designed to assert absolute dominance, heavily protect personal psychological boundaries, and maintain a crucial mental edge in a cutthroat league where any visible sign of weakness is instantly and violently exploited by the opposition. The modern era of women's basketball is officially entering its own version of the 1980s NBA, beautifully mirroring the intense, blood-boiling rivalries of the Bad Boys Pistons or the deeply personal hatred between legendary franchises, where players routinely refused to acknowledge each other off the court and frequently fought on it. See whether the massive training camp rumor was slightly exaggerated by eager insiders trying to get a scoop, or if it was entirely 100% factual down to the very last icy glare and dropped hand. It permanently proves that the bad blood born on the college hardwood is incredibly alive, highly contagious, and rapidly mutating into a massive, undeniable professional rivalry. And as these incredibly talented, heavily scrutinized athletes continue to absolutely dominate the daily sports headlines and elevate the beautiful game to entirely unprecedented financial and cultural heights, it leaves absolutely all of us endlessly wondering, will this deeply bitter, highly personal feud eventually force a violent, unavoidable reckoning on the professional court? Or is this vicious, but wildly entertaining cycle of disrespect exactly what the game desperately needs to thrive and survive in the modern media landscape?